I think for this session, to frame it, we just heard a lot about the buy side, and here we have a lot about the sell side, which is awesome. And just going back to this morning's sessions, we heard about the future of advertising. We also heard about independent ad tech and what that could look like. I think this is in the crosshairs of that. So a mission that we talk about when we use the word in-house is how do retail media networks build what they want and deserve and do it on their terms, right? So that's really the framing for this session. But that's enough about the setting up. I'd just like to hand over to each of our panelists to introduce yourself and your business and maybe a little bit about your journey in retail media so far. And as I'm looking at you down the end, Nana, you can start.
Okay. Hi, my name is Nana. I'm founder of Verkstedt, which is an e-com-centered tech agency. Prior to that, I basically helped scaling and building up Redcare Pharmacy in the role, various roles for 10 years. Among others, I built the MarTech stack. I was responsible for marketing and data. And as founder of Verkstedt, I basically had the pleasure for the last 4 years to actually take the journey in maturing the retail media business there.
So I'm Carlos. After this morning sessions, I came to the realization that I spent 18 years working for the dark side. The cool thing is that I'm on the cool side of media right now. So I spent 18 years at Google in different geographies. Decided to come back to Porto, and I was fortunate enough to find a place at MC to run a retail media business. So we are the largest grocery, for the ones that don't know, we are the largest grocery in Portugal. We run the largest loyalty program, so it was only natural that we went down this path. And I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
I'm Catalina. It's great to be here from the other side as well. I was in agencies for a long time. I worked in Australia in a couple of media agencies there. Then I came to London. It's great to be back. It's really nice to see some friendly faces around here. And lately, in the last 5 years, I've been in ad tech. I went back home. I'm from Colombia originally. And I worked at Rappi, which is a big delivery business, like the Deliveroo of LATAM, launching both merchant ads and programmatic for them. And currently, I am leading the Wolt ads business. If you don't know them, they're one of the biggest delivery businesses in Europe. Actually, 2 years ago, we were acquired by DoorDash, which is the biggest delivery business in the US. And we're present in 27 countries, 500 cities, and currently one of the top 20 biggest grocers in Europe. So very excited to be talking about retail media with you today.
Well, thank you all for that. So you get a sense of the scale, like I say, I loved hearing about the buy side earlier. So going into the sell side and the decisions we've made. Carlos, I'll start with you. You mentioned the word loyalty. And my question officially is what made you go down the route of owning your technology and really bringing it as in-house as possible?
Yeah, well, I guess the decision was pretty simple, right? So running the largest loyalty program, we touch 85% of the families in Portugal. We run a number of stores as well from different sizes. We run the largest grocery e-commerce website in Portugal. It didn't feel natural, although it's still an ancillary business within our core. It didn't feel natural for us not to have control over what we want to do. I think from the very beginning, we understood how fluid the space is as well, and the flexibility that we needed, and we just felt that we wanted to have all of that in-house to be able to act quickly to wherever retail media is gonna go. And so those were the main reasons that we decided to bring everything in-house. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. And Nana, I'll come to you next. So, loyalty data being a trigger for someone with a large loyalty scheme, you might have had a different entry point into bringing your, the decision making to go in-house. Would you like to explain that to the crowd now?
Yeah. So basically, back in 21, we were at the position of redeciding about the ad serving technology, and that was run and operated by the retail media team, and we made an assessment. And we went from a technical due diligence, looking at all available solutions and capabilities that we were looking for in order to evolve the business. and a commercial perspective, already operating a large-scale retail media business. And on the commercial side, the financial scheme had significant impacts on capability sides and like perspective capabilities to evolve and move. We saw quite a few benefits that actually also materialized. And a central scheme for us was also addressing basically circumventing of ad blocking, because that was like significant inventory that we could unlock. And that basically led on all those three dimensions to decide to take it in-house, not do a fully built, but like basically build around the solution.
And we'll definitely dive into more about that later and how it has driven your business forward. But also, Catalina, what was the motivations for your side, both of, you know, in your experience to bring in-house? What are the motivations there?
I think for us, being able to have a really good experience and controlling how an advertiser engages with us and how our users experience that ad, it was really, really important. We needed to ensure that that personalization was done really well, that we had control on how the advertising looks and feels, and it's easier to kind of work with our own engineers to deliver that more integrated native experience as well.
Perfect. So it gives a bit more agility, a bit more speed, and the ability to do so. Nana, coming back to you, and again, we've spoken about this a lot today already, so I'm excited to get into it now. But like going back to the phases of retail media that you've seen, and again, I'll paint Nana as being someone who's been, I think someone in the previous panel, forgive me, I forget who said it. It's about retailers are in a different place, and you can almost place them on the path towards, let's call it the holy grail of Amazon. I think Nana's been quite far down it with a couple of his companies. So from your perspective, Nana, being like an experienced retail media leader, how would you describe the journey to go from where you began to where you are now?
Yeah, so basically I see it in a three-stage journey. So the first stage is like get your basic tech right, which was introducing a new ad server, having basically some measurements and properly working. And also a big part was like having an ad tech that really helped us to circumvent the ad blockers, unleashing inventory. The second phase that we then went into was like being agile and experimenting, like basically taking different formats and then proving those formats on numbers. That's an important part. If you have your numbers right, it's kind of to show the business value of those formats. And the third level is where you actually move from the media part into the performance part, where you actually start to sell real performance. And we've seen all the organizational topics that you've been discussing about basically having the partnering versus actually then really tapping into different budgets. And it's quite an interesting journey. And we've also seen the topic about like having retail media as this independent, separated team, which I actually was, when I was running marketing, I was actually keeping media separated because they were like influencing my transaction-oriented business towards then like really showing numbers and figures to kind of get this integrated. And I think this is a journey that for us, we were capable as like semi-in-house organization, basically move through all different phases and then always show with proven A/B tests and results to get the buy-in of all other departments.
Thanks, Nana. We'll definitely touch on some of those themes too. I've just been reminded that I forgot to mention about a poll that we have live. So I think in your apps, if you go in and look at a poll link to this, we've asked a question around funding. Makes it feel aggressive, but where do we think the media budgets are coming from? And again, the panel previously touched on that as well, so we'll come back to it. I think linked to that also, Catalina, like you mentioned earlier about the motivations of going in-house, and you know we talked off stage around you know where you could be agile and where you think you could capture revenue from. Do you want to go into more detail about that?
Of course. So for us, deciding where to start was actually crucial. We have two segments. We have our CPG big brands, and we had over 150,000 merchants. And offering those guys the possibility of advertising in the platform and getting that share of sales was kind of really important at the beginning. We decided to start with offering merchants the possibility of advertising and then develop later on the CPG side, and that has proven to be successful. We managed to scale the business really, really fast, And in a year that we've live, like we're now multi-million in that sense.
Given you used the word scale, and the previous one was about that, do you want to go more into what that scaling meant? Is it just more ads, or have you grown teams around it, or have you developed other functionalities around it, like reporting? Or
Yes. So for us, scale was being able to penetrate the market. We're present in 27 markets, and teaching some of these smaller retailers what the value of advertising is really challenging. So being able to grow really fast that revenue source to then fund the more advanced programs and products that we needed to develop for the brands. So that's how we decided to go.
thanks for that. So I'm sure we might get some questions on that later. But I'll come back to you, Carlos. You mentioned the words being agile and being in control. Have there been any benefits of that you can talk about in terms of ad format growth or anything similar?
Yeah, well, a lot of revenue already flows into the company via the commercial relationships we have with the suppliers, right? In retail media, we want to call them brands, and we're trying to shape the product to fit to the brand's objectives. And the flexibility has been key to do that. Of course, we inherited a business which was mainly anchored on the commercial relationships, in which the suppliers would buy space in the website on a weekly basis with very limited reporting, not leveraging our loyalty data at all. And so the aim from the beginning was to deploy something to revamp the way mainly that we would sell the inventory closer to what the media space or the media market does. But what was critical through time, and because we didn't know everything in the beginning, we are being able to iterate very quickly. And one of the assets that was underutilized is our loyalty app. Loyalty card app, which has a massive reach, much larger than our grocery e-commerce website, in which we were able to deploy very quickly a video ad on some of that inventory, targeted on top of all the targeting capabilities that we have, and that has been allowing us to unlock much more easily conversations with the brands and the marketing teams and the media budgets. And so I think that's the best example. I don't think we would be able to do that, particularly in that very specific app context, deploying that video in such a short time span, if we hadn't brought that all internally.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, I'm going to go back to the previous panel because I saw you nodding a lot while the panel were talking about like the mechanics of how it works. So, you talk about iterating quickly on building a video format. How did you go about connecting it to the buy side? Was that a process of through existing channels, or was it a different approach?
No, it's all a managed service that we give to the brands right now, right? So the opportunity is very concentrated in a small number of brands for the time being. We're focused on the endemic brands, so to speak, that are also our suppliers. That's where the full value of our proposition really comes to life, right, with the measurement. And we were able off the bat to be able to attribute sales not only online but also in stores. And that's another example of the flexibility that we deployed and how we translated. And so the buy was all managed service again through our team, and that's the way that we're going to go as we learn. Because right now there's still a huge opportunity to capture the media budgets from those brands. Afterwards, we'll be thinking about how we can open to non-endemic brands and eventually open a little bit more for the long tail to have a different relation with us.
Again, I think the word journey speaks to people here, right? Like, so if someone's in the crowd thinking about starting, you have to start somewhere and then go somewhere else to get to the point where we might have been talking about the holy grail of a bit of differentiation from retail media networks to stand out, but then also the standardization to make the mechanics easy and to make the scale achieved. Nana, just coming back to you a second, I think, we talked again about like retail performance and the flywheel, and do you want to talk a bit more about, maybe Amazon-like actions that you've been able to see through your properties?
Yeah, basically. So if you look at Amazon and look at the numbers, like the one thing that for me was like an eye-opener is if you look at the search result page from Amazon and you evaluate how much of the search result page is actually revenue generated by engagement, basically just by clicking a page. This page is slightly differently optimized than a normal search result page, which is just transaction oriented. And right there actually starts a very interesting flywheel effect, because basically if you already can start to monetize engagement prior to the transaction, you can actually take that benefit in order to optimize your competitiveness in the price range, which again will generate more traffic. And thereby, once you cross this barrier of a retail media, you actually get into a very strategically competitive effect where you can position yourself, or if you're a marketplace, have your marketplace participants position themselves with very competitive offerings, which again create new traffic, which again creates new participant in the marketplace, or which again then creates new traffic, and thereby you create this magic flywheel. And I think it's called the retail media flywheel. So there are several articles about this out there, and it's quite an interesting effect which you can reach at a certain size.
Yeah, thanks, Nana. I think it's interesting, again, like we talk internally a lot around Amazon being, you know, the god mode of retail media in a way, not saying it's something for everyone to aspire to. So just to answer the question from earlier, do you aspire to be like to Amazon levels, or how are you feeling about your next kind of year's focus on what you're trying to prioritize? Catalina, I'll go to you first, and then Carlos.
Yeah, I think it's really hard, and I don't think our sweet spot will be to ever kind of build such a huge ecosystem. I think what brands and merchants expect from us is performance. Like in reality, it's really hard to kind of detach ourselves. We're different in the sense that we are not doing as much of managed services. We really want to push programmatic and self-service capabilities. But yet, I think that being said, is not to try and drive the reach and the frequency and the branding objectives as far. We know that our sweet spot is to drive performance and to drive high return on investment. For example, in our merchant ads, which is the restaurants and the stores buying advertising, we have a simple cost per order model. Make it really easy for them to see the value and the return on investment and the growth in new users and sales for them. And on the brand side, we know that even if we do programmatic and audiences and data, still very geared towards driving sales and return on investment. And I think if we stay true to that, we'll find a spot, because it's needed, like in the market, to have this differentiation and to know exactly what you can be really great at and deliver on that.
Yeah, well, of course, we're more or less confined to the Portuguese market. We're expanding to Spain. So I'll speak in the context of the Portuguese market, and we clearly want to be much better or execute much better than Amazon, and I think we have the assets to do that. We have a store in every corner, right? We have a recurrency of transactions with us, which gives such a depth in terms of buying behaviors from the consumers in the market. And we have the ability to measure that holistically, right? So our loyalty card is present in 80% of sales, and so I think we have all the conditions to really build a strong value proposition that is able to compete with Amazon with not too much problem, at least in what concerns the brands that are endemic to us, right? So if we think in a broader sense, I think we will still have the ability to rally other partners in the market to enrich the knowledge that we have about the consumer and build a strong proposition. And so I think we look at Amazon more from a execution perspective reference, more so than the breadth of what they can eventually achieve in Portugal, particularly in this food and grocery ecosystem.
Thanks, Carlos. Yeah, I think it's always interesting to have them as a reference point, but like you say, how does each retail media network, and we had reference to lots of them spinning up, but real companies with real data, like how do they connect to their brands in the best possible way and find their space in the market? Shifting gears a little bit and coming back to you, Nana, like again, like think about the evolution of a retailer, and again, retail media networks spinning up, like they might have started post-pandemic or pandemic with a certain technology stack. Like, can you talk a little bit about the conditions that might make going in-house with their technology more relevant for them in terms of sell-through and scale?
So in my personal opinion, so there's probably a price point where a revenue share model compared to a licensing fee model actually really switches in effectiveness. And the second part is like, where do you want to go with retail media? If you really want to have a retail media solution that is part of the user journey and that optimizes transaction as well as the retail media engagement at the same time, you kind of have to have a tech stack that's like in-house marketing and retail media, some sort of integrated and combined. Like if you have a completely separated, siloed retail media solution, which is disjunct from your CDP and in-house customer, and you actually target two different audiences and you don't have this integrated, it's going to be quite difficult to get your transaction-oriented teams harmonized actually with the retail teams. So I would actually argue if you're really early and if you're small scale that you cannot get to a certain point. I can totally understand that it's an economical decision to basically take a given solution that gives everything out of the box. If you are at a certain size already and the commercials might be one reason, or if you consider that it's a strategic orientation to derive revenue not only from transaction but also from engagement, then the flexibility and agility and the capability of harmonizing retail media with like transaction-oriented performance activities in the organization is actually a point that's to be considered. So those are the two things that I would see as a core decision point.
Yeah, thanks, Nana. I've also seen our speaking time has gone red, which means we must be running down slowly. So coming to you, Carlos, not quickly, we've still got some time, but like, if you were to speak to a retailer out in the wild from any kind of region, what would be your advice or any tips you would give about getting started at taking the technology or taking the decision to bring the technology in-house?
Yeah, well, I think it's the most critical thing, and I felt this when I began, I keep feeling every day, it's really, really important to have a solution that is able to adapt to whatever happens in the market, but above all, to the learnings that you'll be gathering through time from the interactions with clients and everything. Again, our core business is retail. Of course, we've been hiring people from outside to try to learn as quickly as possible. But the fact is that the sole difference between the relationship from suppliers and bringing those suppliers to media clients, there's a lot there to navigate. And I think that may translate in needs in terms of product that I don't think can be catered for the standard solutions. And so my main advice was to bear in mind the need for flexibility through time, because no one knows what this is going to look like in 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years' time.
Thanks, Carlos. No one can predict the future, huh? That's a boring panel answer. Catalina, any advice that you would give to someone in your position, maybe they're thinking about making this step? Is there anything that you would guide them towards or away from?
100%. As you've seen in the presentations, data is super important and is the differentiating factor in an offering. So it's not only about like plastering ads in your property, it's also how you understand the consumers, how you can present that information to the agencies, to the clients, how you can co-create with them strategies, how do you think about the ads and the promotions that you run, and how you think of the business as a full unit inside of your company. You have to think about marketing, forecasting. You have to think about like every business area is part of that retail media unit inside of your business. And if you're not doing it, you're going to have areas that are going to fail. So my big advice is think about it as a full-on company inside of your company, and the data part is crucial to differentiate.
That makes sense. And I know, Nana, we spoke in the past about organizationally and tiptoeing through growth. Do you want to maybe talk about some of your experiences on that?
I think one of the key topics was having a small, agile team that is very result-oriented on progressing, and then building piece by piece and always building proofs, like building small solutions, generating the numbers, proving, and then taking the next step. So that was an approach that worked quite well on our journey, basically. which has grown over the time. You basically start very small, and it's a small and agile team. You don't need 50 people or something, but you need a dedicated team with the right capabilities, and then like iterate through it step by step and start with the basics, like get your ground tech straight, take the low-hanging fruits like ad blocking technologies, and then move forward.
Yeah, thanks, Nana. Go on.
Sorry,
Yeah.
no, let me just add, because as I was hearing, I was reflecting also on our journey. Let's take the store, for instance. We have a number of stores, and every time I have a conversation with people that run the systems, that run the stores, either the service screens, kiosks in the front of the store, or the self-checkouts, all those systems are different. And I'm only talking about the internal intrinsicies, right? And so this speaks to the need to have something agile from a retail media perspective that can be deployed as you think about those touch points, because those are stores, and it's probably down in the funnel, but the reality is as well, for us, out of a 10 million population, we have 5 million people getting into our stores every month, right? So you will come across, not only the ecosystem is evolving significantly, but also, particularly if you work for a retailer, traditional retailer, you'll come across a lot of internal barriers which will become unsurmountable if you don't have the agility needed. So.
Yeah, thanks for that, Carlos. Appreciate that. So I think it's time to look at the poll result. I don't know where that goes necessarily. So yeah, look behind us, Catalina. We can see what the results are. Again, touched on it in the previous panel. I don't suppose there are too many surprises, but do you want to reflect on that, Catalina, or were you expecting something similar?
Actually, super interesting because in our case, we definitely see a shift from traditional media. And also, obviously, the trade budget's coming, that's expected, but like TV, we've seen investments coming from traditional above the line.
I would be delighted if this was the reality, to be honest, particularly capturing for, performance budgets from Google, in my case. But I see a lot more coming from trade budgets, honest, at least for us. The trade budgets that the brands hold still, at least in our case, have a very tight relationship with the way that people perceive the stores and the role that a retail media can have. The brand budgets, it's where we want to go. Arguably, the market in Portugal is probably in a different stage in the curve, but I wonder, even if in the UK, from the conversations I've been having, if the reality is a little bit different.
Well, I'm quite heartened by that. Those that know me, like, you know, I've worked in performance advertising and brand, and you know, context times format with the right message and brand budgets. Like, I think retail media offers up the chance to do that. So I'm really heartened by that top line. Nana, do you have any reflections?
So I can't say anything about the original numbers, but what I can definitely state, it's quite a journey to move. And in order to get to the performance budget, you have to have your tech and data at a level that you actually can show compelling, outperforming numbers. And that's actually quite a journey. And once you're at that point of time, it actually also implies that you need quite a different skill set in retail media. You need data and tech, because data and tech generates the product that shows the performance numbers, which will actually cost this. And yeah, so I think it's quite a journey where you have to be quite far down the retail media maturity in order to really go and get the performance budgets. However, the traditional retail budgets are more and more requesting performance data. So actually all the existing budgets are nowadays more and more having buyer side people who actually know online marketing performance and are requesting this data. So it's becoming more and more difficult to just have a CPI-based media sale.
Thanks for that, everybody. And we have hit time, so we will end it there. I dare say we'll be in the pub over the road from some point this evening. So if you want to ask any follow-up questions, feel free. But otherwise, thank you very much for your time.